The name of this presentation is How to Become an Online Influencer, and I will hopefully give you a roadmap of what to do, and I'll also explain the benefits of it and why you want to do that. I want to say thanks to Nick right here. He's pulled me out of a jam because this computer is not mine. I, like an idiot, didn't remember my computer that had my presentation on it, and he's helping me out, so thank you very much, Nick. All right, that is me. I am the owner of Spark Media Solutions. I have been a 17-year veteran technology journalist, been in more than 40 media outlets, print, radio, TV, online. I started my business, Spark Media Solutions, almost 6 years ago, and what it is we are brand journalists, and what that means is we are press for hire. Companies hire us. You might see me with my camera equipment and my microphone that says DICE on it, DICE being one of my clients. Companies hire us to create media for them. We create videos, articles, photos, podcasts, blogs, anything that's media we created. The way we are distinctive of PR, we are constantly confused with public relations, is we usually do not create content about the company. We create content from the voice of the company. The idea being create all this sort of editorial-based content and publish it on the site. So all the stuff I'm producing here at Cocaine is about the sessions, about the people, about the valuable information that's here at the event. I'm not creating anything about DICE itself, because that's of interest to your audience. Our policy, and I'm going to mention this multiple times, is content is the currency of social and search. If you are looking to be traded in social or be more visible in search, you have to be creating assets. And I'm going to show you how to do that efficiently too, and not kill yourself in the process. That's where to find me. SparkMediaSolutions.com. The blog is SparkMinute.com. If you feel so inclined to tweet the discussion, #influencer, and my Twitter name is dspark. And here's the one thing though I want you to all write down. I have tons of articles and other information at this link right here, so you really don't need to take any notes. If you just copied on that, and there's more detailed articles galore at bit.ly/influence_2012. And if you miss that now, I'll bring it up at the end of the presentation as well. All right, so there are tons and tons of articles about how to reach influencers, but there's, to my knowledge, so I have not seen much of how to actually be an influencer. And so what I'm going to talk about is the value of being an actual influencer and why you want to do that. The main reason you want to be an influencer rather than trying to attract them is you're being seen as someone people want to go to rather than a person that's bugging other people, and it's actually an unfortunate brand that PR people are constantly having to shake at that time, or currently. And it's also a very overlooked way that people think about when you want to engage with other influencers. If you are an influencer yourself, you are seen as a peer rather than someone trying to seek, advantage from. And here's the big thing, because a lot of this stuff, I'm going to show you some very, very successful people in this, and you're going, well, how am I going to do this? You got to remember, everyone that you think is sort of internet famous and influencer was at one time a complete nobody. That is a key thing you have to grasp and wrap around your head, because it takes time, effort, and work. But there are very efficient things you can do to not kill yourself in the process. I'm also going to show you a lot of different things. This is very much a menu of stuff you can do. Don't feel that you have to do everything that I am describing. You have to figure out what is right for you, what is right for your audience, and what you can physically pull off and want to pull off at the same time. All right, why do you want to try to be a leading voice? What is the value to that? Well, one of the things I said is you increase your visibility in social and search. That is key. And I go back to it again and again. I'll mention it even more. Content is the currency of social and search. All right? You can't PR and friggin' market your way into it. While those are great amplifiers, you need actual content. You will reduce your marketing costs. You will get what is known as earned media rather than having to purchase paid media, like search engine marketing, like any kind of advertising will do. The more that you create content and gets passed along, that is what is known as earned media. The better you create it, the more it's passed along, the more value you get from it. The efforts are cumulative, meaning the money and time that I put into creating content in January carries over to February, unlike traditional marketing. If I spend money in January, it disappears in January. I have to keep spending money in February and March and April and all that to just maintain level. With creating your voice and essentially what is known as content marketing, which I despise that term, and I will explain in a while. We call ourselves brand journalists. Content marketing has this sense of, here's some content for you, but by the way, I don't know if you know this, I'm pulling a fast one on you, I'm marketing to you too. Nobody likes that kind of friggin' relationship. That's why we refer to ourselves as brand journalists. We are journalists first. The people who pay us are brands. You will increase your connections and relationships. The more you do this, because a core part of building your brand is interviewing. If you saw me out with my camera equipment, I'm here shooting for Dice News. The more you interview, the more you get better relationships, better connections, and that helps your sort of peer association as well. And again, I'll talk more about this. But this is the main reason you're here, and why I highly, highly recommend this. You will increase your prices. I cannot stress this enough. It's what I did for my own business. I do it for my clients as well. The more you are seen as a valuable asset to the industry, the more valuable you are seen in whatever it is your work is, whether you're a developer. So if you feel that as a developer, you have a freaking glass ceiling, you build your industry voice, you bust through that glass ceiling. Java developers are only seen as this price per hour, whatever it is. This is super, super key. And I'm a strong proponent of building your value so you can increase your prices. All right, as I said before, content is the currency of social and search. This is a key thing. If you cannot create content, you can't be an influencer. That's just sort of the fact. You just can't do it. You have to create some type of content. Like I said, you can use marketing PR you can't use marketing PR to establish a voice. It's only an amplifier. And then the other thing is you have to have some kind of publishing platform. 98% of my clients, we recommend a blog. There are some rare cases we say only have a YouTube channel or only have a Twitter or only have a Facebook page, but the blog is kind of a home base for all of that, and I'm sure you're all familiar with WordPress. It really is the best. Everybody else is fourth tier compared to WordPress. So if you don't have a blog, start a WordPress. There is real money in this. So this guy, his name is Alex Saunders. He has a blog called Saunders Blog. His company is called Cauliflower. And I want to read some stats to you. So in 2002, he began blogging 3 times a day, every single day. 3 posts a day, every single day. That seems a lot, I know. And he writes about VoIP communications. He went from 9,000 viewers a month, which, by the way, I should mention, that's a lot. So he started with a lot. But again, he picked a niche and he was early on. 9,000 a month. And in the end of the year, he went to 200,000 visitors a month. And given the mentions of his product on his blog and the popularity of the site, he calculated he was making $13,000 a year in marketing costs, or marketing benefit. Excuse me, marketing benefit. And this goes back to the cumulative content I made before. Is that is now continuous $13,000 in marketing value every single month. He put all the effort in, and it's just happening for him. So that's another enormous value of that. All right, so let's actually walk through how you're going to do it yourself. What's your voice? You have to define you have to know your business and what it is, the voice that you want to create. So ask yourself some questions. How do you want to be perceived? What perception will best help your business? Are you the expert in this? Are you the person who's connected to all these people in the industry? Do you want to be micro, or do you want to be have a grand vision of the industry? And we'll look at more specifics. How are you currently perceived? You really just have to ask your friends and colleagues about this. I mean, it may seem weird, but it's just like, I don't mean to be weird about this, but what do you think of me? Like, you would objectively describe what I do, what is it? You really need to understand that, because your perception and other people's perceptions may be violently different, and that's not good. You want those to be as close as possible. What is your audience trying to do? So this is where you find an available niche. If your audience is trying to, do some kind of development that they're failing at, and you could possibly interview everybody who's an expert in HTML5, say, and provide all these resources on HTML5, that could be a huge benefit. I mean, I don't know what it is, but ask yourself, what are they trying to do? And this is the one I ask when I'm trying to land a client myself. I just say, why are you losing sales? What happens when you pitch somebody and they say, well, I don't understand how you're different than competitor X, or I don't even know that you guys exist, or really you do this? So if you can create content that answers that issue. So I always ask, well, do you have a white paper that explains how you're different than competitor X? And they go, no. But then you just told me that's why you're losing sales. It's a really, really common thing that nobody even sees. So if you're losing gigs or something like that, what is the reason you're losing gigs? Well, we couldn't see, he didn't have an example of X, Y, Z. Go create an example of X, Y, Z, so you don't lose it. And the most important thing is, what do you want to do? Because this is, I mean, I say all the other stuff, but if you don't do something you want to do, you're never going to keep at it. There's no one that's going to pay you along the way, because it's going to be hard at the beginning, and I'll explain that. But you really just got to think about what gets you passionate, what gets you excited. All right, so I'm going to show you some examples of different editorial models that you can choose. Don't think you have to do these three. These are just some examples. So this right here is Nick O'Neill of allfacebook.com. He actually sold the company allfacebook.com. And he went after a niche. He said, I'm just going to write about Facebook. Well, he could have just said, I'm going to write about social media. Well, there's friggin' Mashable out there and a ton of other social media websites out there. And he would, well, have some serious problems trying to compete as one guy against Mashable. But what if I just attack this one niche, Facebook? Like what I said, you could try to write all about programming, or you could just write about HTML5, or specifically HTML5 on mobile versus native. I don't know. You could pick a very specific niche. But the key thing is, what can I get on early? And this is where you have to sort of use your crystal ball. What can I get on early so in 6 months from now it's more developed and I'm seen as the leading expert in that? Next one is challenge an industry. This is Paul Levy. He is the former CEO of the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston. And he started a blog called Running a Hospital. You know how many CEOs of hospitals were blogging? Zero. None were. He decided to write very openly about what his hospital was doing. And he did some things that will shock you. Is he publicly posted the failure rates they were having on central line infections. As you might imagine, his lawyers got a little upset about this. They didn't know he was doing it. But then he explained how they were going to succeed at it, and they did. They were very successful at it. Now, you think, a guy who's a CEO, this is a major hospital in Boston, I tell you, this is not a small hospital, it's huge. And I'll get to this, but I have no time to blog. How does a CEO of a hospital have time to blog? And I interviewed him. I want to read a quote from him. If one of your jobs as CEO of an organization is to represent that organization before the public, with traditional venues being newspapers, features, lectures, and the like, then the use of social media is a logical extension of the corporate responsibility of the CEO. The outreach potential is excellent, plus, and this is what I love most, you can express your point of view not being filtered by reporters, editors, or whatever. I wrote an article about entitled how do corporate blogging is like selling uncut cocaine. Because here's how the normal PR experience works in communication. I am a company, I hire a PR firm. The PR person then pitches the reporter my story. The reporter either writes a story off the PR person or interviews me or interviews somebody else. So I talk to the PR person, cut. PR person talks to the reporter, cut. Reporter talks to me, another cut. The story is like the telephone game. It's getting, it's dissolving in that whole process. If you create it yourself, it's unfiltered. It's pure. And those journalists can see it as well. Plus, that whole process is a gamble. There's nothing saying that reporter's going to write it. If you write something and put it on your blog, there's no gamble. It's there. So I'm a huge proponent of that. By the way, I should mention, I always usually mention at the beginning, but I forgot. I like to keep my presentations open, so there is no specific Q&A portion at the end of this. So if you have any questions during any part of this, please just raise your hand. I'm more than happy to pause and engage. Yes?
You mentioned time. Where would a CEO like that find the time to actually
Do that. And well, what he said is part of my job. Part of my job is to go and speak to the press. Part of my job is to give public presentations. Part of my job is to be part of media. Social media is a natural extension. That's what he's saying. And the benefit is none of the crap gets filtered. Because when he speaks to a reporter, he doesn't know how the hell it's going to come out. That's what was his aggravation. So this is Rafadali. This is another editorial model you can choose, and that's being a meta site for an industry. So he started a company called paidcontent.org, which is sold for somewhere between 30 and 50 million. I don't remember exactly. But what he was he wrote a daily newsletter, which also became a blog, which was just the sort of a snapshot of the industry news about paid for content, like 2-3 sentences on each thing, and that was the piece. Anyways, became insanely successful. He had different versions of it. He had one called MocoNews.net, which was about mobile content. But it was meta information. He wasn't getting the source. He went and found all the source and sort of summarized everything. So you could, going back to the HTML5 example, there could be tons and tons of sites on HTML5. You could go out and read all the stories and write 2-sentence synopses on all of them and link to every story. So anyone who wants to know about HTML5, you come to your meta site that has all that information. Yes?
But do you, are you supposed to like pay the other sites where all the content you're scraping? Like, can they sue you or something? Cause that's
so this is there's been like a famous Google Links case on this. So no, they're not going to sue you for you're just linking to them.
right.
If you were to copy and paste their information into your site, then yes, that's plagiarism. You're not supposed to do that, and super easy to catch. So really, don't do it. But no, if you just read it, write a 2-sentence synopsis, and link to it, you're fine. Perfectly fine. Also, if you're small potatoes, nobody cares. That's the other thing. You can kind of screw around at the beginning because no one's going to go after you. Once you become Disney, then they go after you. Yes.
But also, it's in case your robots.txt say that this stuff is crawlable and searchable.
Right, and that's what I said. It was saying
Google links to it, then you can too, right?
Yeah. But the thing is, like, if you plagiarize, it's one of the easiest things to catch. I mean, it's just crazy. All right, this is a common thing. Blogging when you have no time to blog. And let me address this right out of the gate because everyone gets really knotted up. Like, I don't see how these bloggers have all this time to blog. So there is a way to do it. And what it is I liken a great journalist or a great blogger to being like a martial artist, a really great martial artist. A great martial artist just looks like a normal person, walking around and saying, but their mind is always attuned. So if they're attacked, they literally can be ready and snap into action. The same is the idea with a really good blogger, a really good journalist, in the sense that while they're just out and about doing whatever they are, they're always being attuned to stories. They know when a story pops up. They know that this conversation that I'm having with you right now is really valuable and I gotta go write about it. So it's gonna take you a little time to train yourself to be like that, but that's kind of the idea behind it. So one of the things I like to do is try to think in headlines. When you think about something, think about the headlines that attract you and how you can write, a subject, a category, or in a specific headline. But more importantly, saying it when you have no time to blog is, what are you repeating? Every one of us has sort of aspects of our business that we're constantly repeating to people over and over again, whether in emails, whether on the phone, whether in conversation. Whatever that thing is you're repeating, either describing your business or aspect of your work, you write that down, you publish it. So the next time somebody asks you, you just point to it. You don't write another long email saying the same darn thing over and over and over again. Similarly, look at your sent email. This is a great source for blog posts. We all write really long emails that explain something. Just go through your sent email, find one of those really long things, copy and paste it in the blog, edit it, you got yourself another great blog post. Blog a great conversation, like I was just saying before. You are going to have great conversations here at Code Camp. It's going to happen. Now, if you're smart, what you're going to do is right after that, you're going to write it down, write some notes out. If you can't write the whole thing, you're going to write some notes down of that conversation, or you'll pull out a flip camera like right here, and you'll shoot a quick little video interview of the person you're talking with. It's really, really important to do that in the moment. Now, it doesn't have to be fully publishable, but you have that great conversation, capture that. Capture it in the way you can. But again, the reason I'm saying that none of these things are taking up more time in the sense that you're already physically here. You're already having these conversations. You've already been saying these things over and over again. You've already been writing these long emails. All I'm saying is shift it from a private conversation between you and me, from an email, from the thing I keep repeating to everybody over and over, and make it public. That's all you're doing. You're shifting from private to public. So these are some of my most successful articles that I write. Is whenever I tell a personal story of something that happens with me in business or anything else. Usually, if I feel that I've been wrong in some way, I publish a story about it, and that usually does extremely well. People very, very much connect to that. I'm not going to get into the whole thing about story writing, but that is kind of a key thing. And then lastly, connected to that, is keep a what to blog file. I mean, the time that you come up with that great story, or that great idea, that great headline, whatever it is, may not also be the time that you will have to sit down and write it. So I'm a big fan of either on your phone, well not either, both on your phone and your computer, have just a little file. We've all got little notepads, just one document, what to blog, and you just keep writing. So when you do have those moments, oh, I got an hour right now, you just look at it, because the time we have to write and the time we have our ideas are often not the same times. So when you're looking for something to write about, you'll have that what to blog file. Oh, sorry, lastly, and this is going to go into a big chunk I want to talk about, is interview people. Someone just asked me today, goes, I'm just out of school, I don't have any experience. And I go, here's the magic. Interview people who know more than you. Because A, you will learn, B, your value will be extended by association. I'm going to show you that in a second. This is the core to creating, because unless you're the smartest human being on the planet, you don't know everything. I mean, you want to express some of the things you know, but the way you grow your knowledge and the way you grow content is to interview people. That's exactly what I'm doing today. You know, I've already conducted about 17 interviews with people today, and that's all going to become content. All right, so here are some examples. Some of the people I've interviewed. If you're in tech, you probably recognize a lot of these faces. By interviewing these people, it raises my profile, it raises my client's profile, because I'm now associated with these people. It's just really, really important to do as much interviewing as possible. So let me give you an example of this guy right here, John Jantz. He has a very successful podcast called Duct Tape Marketing. And just see if I have a stat here on it. Oh, no. He was a complete nobody. As I was said, all influencers at one point were complete nobodies. He just started sending out emails that said interview request. That's it. And he's gotten interviews with Guy Kawasaki, Seth Godin, who are very, very big names in social media and in marketing. And he just interviewed them for his podcast. And not only was it a great way to have content from these great people, but it was a great way to start a relationship. And this is the other core thing I think about this, is interviewing is the easiest way to form a relationship. So if I come up to you and I say, hey, by the way, can I tell you all about myself and how wonderful I am and how great I am, and I'll come back to my booth and I'll show you a 10-minute demo of the product. Who talks like that? It's friggin' insulting. It's rude. But rather, if I come up to you and I say, hey, what are you doing here? What interests you? What's interesting about this whole event? Now I'm showing interest. I said, hey, can I actually interview you? And then I publish content about you. That's a very, very kind way to open a relationship. And it's also an extremely, you know, we're all kind of got levels of egos, and you become an influencer by letting other people create content about you. So, I mean, that's how you can extend it even further. So, start by caring about others first, and then it will come back to you eventually.
Got a question.
Sure.
So, you know, a lot of people, like, I've tried that, like in the conversation, if I bring up a camera, people kind of get awkward.
Well, you need to swim. So,
and they feel shy or whatever the reason is, but how do you go about that?
Okay, so let me tell you my man on the street technique. So I do two different kinds of interviewing. I do interviewing where I just say, hey, can I do 3-4 minutes with you? And I pick up my equipment, and I have this equipment that goes over my shoulder and like this. One good way is if someone's presenting, I walk up to them after the presentation, can I do a quick interview? Usually, the only time they say no to that is if they have a corporate policy of not talking to the press. And I will tell everybody right now, never ever try to interview anyone at Amazon. They will not friggin' talk to you. They've got a company-wide friggin' policy, it pisses me off to no end. I don't know what, they bring people to events like this to present, but they won't talk on camera. So, but someone like you could just whip out a camera and shoot them. And by the way, every one of us has a video camera in our pocket. We all have cell phones. So I don't know why people don't, end this policy. But one of the techniques that I use, I do these kind of man-on-the-street techniques where I literally stop anyone and interview them. You got to kind of charm people a little bit. So I'll stop people and I'll say, I have, quote, lines that I use. So I'll stop people and say, hey, I'm stopping seemingly intelligent people to ask them a question about X, Y, Z. That always works. The other thing is if you're at a trade show, use what you're seeing of the person to do it. That's if you want to just literally stop anybody. So if you can read their badge, unfortunately everyone's badge type is so small they can't read. You read the badge, say their name, because people are very shocked when all of a sudden they're walking down an aisle at a conference and all of a sudden someone says their name. They don't realize that their name is hanging around their neck. The other trick is if you can't read it, we just, you can pick an aspect of the person and make fun of it. Like saying, oh, I'm so glad you're here. We're having I'm doing only interviews with real people with really long white hair. Are you available? So charm the person a little bit. And then the other thing is, if you're chatting, that's if you want to just stop someone in the moment. If you're just chatting with someone, say, hey, I have this blog or this video blog or this podcast, and I'm doing this whole series on this. Can I interview you about it? Rather than, as you're talking, you do this. That's going to freak people out. So don't do that. You just got to be polite about it. Create a regular series and stick to it. This is, what's his name again? Lighting out here. Andrew Warnick, Mixergy. So he interviews entrepreneurs. And he used to just do an interview like 2 times a week. And nothing came of it. And then he started to do interviews 5 times a week. So every single day of the week. And key thing, he did it in batches, and we'll talk about how to do things easily. But the key thing is, he did this, he just wanted to get good at interviewing. If you know nothing, or you don't know that much, this is the key thing about interviewing. Interviews increase your influence to a broader audience. So if I interview an HTML5 expert, even though I know nothing about HTML5, people will start associating me with HTML5. That's super, super important to understand. You interview the expert, you get the knowledge by association. Even though you couldn't be interviewed on it, people now see you, oh, he's the HTML5 guy, because he interviews all the people on HTML5 and other stuff. So if you can't create something every day, which by the way, do not start like that, you will quit very quickly. It's way too much at the beginning. Just do something regularly. Regularly could be once a month. This is my newsletter. I put it out twice every month, and it is a way for people to be top of mind with us. And by the way, if you're interested in getting on my newsletter, go to sparkminute.com or sparkmediasolutions.com, and you can sign up for the newsletter there. But we put it out once every 2 weeks, and it's only content. It's showing what we're doing, what we're creating. I try to provide valuable information. And the key thing is, I'm not selling anything really on this. Now and then it's kind of, I'll mention like a webinar that I think I've had one webinar that was paid for. But the idea is just to keep me top of mind with people. And then what happens, instead of you harassing people, got any work for me, got any work for me? What happens is when you keep pushing this out, when they have work, they'll call you. And I mean, this just recently happened. Honestly, I literally just landed something for Oracle because of doing just this. Interview tips. So let's go more into what you're asking about, how to get those interviews. Just ask. I'm telling you. I don't think I've ever said no to an interview personally. Most people who are influencers will do it. And don't be afraid to shoot high. Whoever the hottest shot in your industry is, interview that person. Go right after. All you have to do is send an email that says, I would like to interview. Rarely do people say no.
Now, you know,
Sure.
jump in on that. Do you have to like, so they're busy people, and they're taking time to interview with you. Do you have to offer them something like pay them or gift or
Oh, that's a
something?
big no. Definitely don't do that. But it's something that's coming up later, but I'll mention it now. I highly, in fact, what am I saying? It's like one of the tips coming up here. Well, I'll just mention it now. Avoid media relations like the friggin' plague if you can. Sometimes you can't, depending on where you're going for an interview, but try to avoid media relations. If anyone is PR, they're gonna be like, why? There's a lot of wonderful people in PR. I love them. But here's the problem. If you choose to go through media relations, you're going to run into the following roadblocks. Hello, David. You want to interview Mr. Executive? All right, well, when will this be? How long will it take? How big is your audience right now? Can we see the questions beforehand? Will we be able to approve this after it's done? If you just go to the person directly, you don't get any of those questions. Trust me, that is annoying beyond belief. They are protecting themselves. This is not to benefit the person. They are protecting themselves to show that, hey, I got you on a site that gets so much traffic. By the way, never tell anyone you're traffic. You don't need to. They don't need to know that crap. Just say, I want to interview this person. But if you can, just do your best and avoid media relations. Go straight to the source if you can do it, but not all the time. Be prepared. What I'm saying is, this is not always possible, but definitely don't go, if you emailed someone say, I want to interview you, and then you're ready for your interview, and you're not prepared, that's bad. But being that I go to a lot of conferences, and I haven't even seen the person speak, and I have to interview them because I know they're a hotshot, I'll often begin to go, hey, I'd love to interview you for such and such. Tell me, what's top of mind with you right now? I'll say, what are you really obsessed with? And I'll go, let's talk about that. And the big thing, by the way, also, if you're interviewing people, especially if you're capturing them on video or audio, don't let them answer it without you pressing the record button. If they start to answer it, say, stop, let me get my equipment set up, and we'll go. Because the second answer is never as good, ever. Produce in batches like Andrew Warner. If you're going to be doing daily interviews, don't literally do daily interviews. Produce 4 or 5 a day, and then roll them out that week. As I said before, avoid media relations. Be where they are. This is the biggest thing. This is going to save you enormous time. The fact that I was able to bang out 17 interviews today is because I'm here. All right, that's the big reason. I'm physically here. All right, if I had to contact those 17 people, it would have taken me weeks and cost me a fortune. Just go where the people are. And then the last 2 items is really the best way that you can build your audience. Is number 1, interview people who already have an audience. So someone who has a bazillion Twitter followers, have a crazy successful blog. Interview those people. They will say yes. And then similar to that, select people at big brands. So if you have a friend who's a hotshot at IBM or works at another huge brand, interview them. This happened, I launched this first 2 podcasts for Sprint, and we interviewed the IT director of the NFL and also the IT director for a winning NASCAR race team for the year that we did it. And just because we were associating ourselves with NASCAR and NFL, did extraordinarily well. As did our interviews with people who just had really super popular blogs. All right, this is the other technique to save yourself a lot of time. The biggest cost you're going to have and the biggest pain is creating content. If you don't know how to efficiently create content, you're going to kill yourself early on, and it's going to drive you crazy. You have to have you have to do something I call one effort, multiple units of content. All right. Often, when a company approaches us, they say, "We want to create one video. I want to create one article." This is the most costly way of doing it. Anytime you want to create one thing, it's going to cost you a fortune, and I'll explain. If I got hired to interview, some really famous executive, I wouldn't just create one video of it. I would shoot one long interview. I would split it up. I'd create an article. I'd take photos of that interview as well. I'd make a 30-second highlight of that. I would turn it into an audio file and have a transcript of it as well. And I'll show you exactly what I did here. So when I launched my business, Spark Media Solutions, I launched it with this piece of content, which by the way is now almost 6 years old and almost completely dated, but called The 12 Principles of New Media. And I wrote an article about 12, and then I also interviewed 8 people on these 12 principles and created 12 videos on it. So let me show you all the different pieces of content here. So right down here at the bottom, you can just read it online. So you read the article online, or you can come and just download the PDF and read it there. Or you can click on any one of these links, and if you're only interested in one of these principles, you just read that section alone. Or you can watch one of the 12 videos. Or you can listen to it streaming, or you can download, or you can subscribe to the podcast, or you can read the transcript of it. In all, I had 52 different ways you could consume this piece of content. Or you can just read the headlines too, and get some value just reading the headlines over here on the left. 52 different ways. That meant I could give people whether they wanted to spend 20 seconds or 2 hours with my content. And that's a key thing. You create a 20-minute video, then you're demanding every person has to have 20 minutes to watch this. Not everybody has 20 minutes. So if you can slice it and dice it, and this was one effort, now I have 52 pieces of content, or 52 ways to consume it. Make yourself visible to influencers. So so the super standard technique in Twitter is just to @reply people. Believe it or not, @reply, if you're really trying to get the attention of someone very famous, @replying them will get you more notice than trying to send them an email directly. They pay more attention to their Twitter feed, especially if they're assuming they're active on Twitter, than they do their email inbox. So let me give you 2 examples of 2 companies that did this. This woman on the left, Mel DePauli, she created a list. I think it was top 20 people, or just top people you should be following on Twitter. And she was starting on Twitter and she wanted to know top people to follow. Well, she created this article, top people you should follow on Twitter. Well, guess what? If you're one of the top people that made her list, you're going to find out about it. You got your Google alert set up, and it's a little bit of an honor. Even though she may be a nobody, to you, you're going to look at the list, you now know who she is. She doubled her follower count because of this, and half of the people on the list discovered her because of the list. And then the other one, smartsheet.com, they created a list of what they believe to be the, looks like 26 or so, most thoughtful technology writers. And they reached out to 7 of them, and 6 of them ended up writing and blogging about it. Again, these are all the influencers in the space. If I write about the influencers in the space, they will recognize me. This is one thing that nobody thinks about. Offer yourself up for an interview. Everyone thinks, well, that's kind of boastful. Hey, by the way, I have an awesome interview. You should really interview me. Well, believe it or not, it's a really smart thing to do. Because if you've ever worked on a publication or a radio or a television show, booking guests is the world's biggest pain in the ass. It is so unbelievably painful. And if you can make that person's job easier by introducing yourself as a good guest, and by the way, you have to actually come with a topic. So you have to say, hey, I saw that you did a show on XYZ. I would be great for this topic, by the way. I have a piece of content about it. About that, so they can see what you're talking about. You should have some sort of back content that they can look at to do that. But do it. It really is a smart thing to do, and the person will not actually think you're obnoxious. The complete opposite. They will be appreciative that you did that. And I'll show you a perfect example. This woman's name is Susan Bratton. She did that exactly with me. I had my own podcast series called the Be the Voice podcast, and she goes, I looked at your podcast, I think I'd be perfect. And guess what? She was right. She was perfect. She was a great interview. And I ended up interviewing her again. And I pulled the moves she pulled on me on her. She has her own podcast called Dishy Mix, which is far more popular than mine. And I said, I'd be a great interview for your podcast. And she ended up interviewing me as well. Oh, this is also a great resource. If you're not familiar with this site, helpareporter.com, highly recommend it. The way Help a Reporter works is if you are a journalist, and any of you who choose to blog, you can consider yourself a journalist, you put out a pitch saying, I'm looking for people to talk on XYZ, or I'm just looking for answers to this question. And you put it out at helpareporter.com, and you say your deadline, my deadline is next Friday, and people will email you back either the answer in email or say, I'm available on the phone to interview. And it can be very, very specific. You can say, I'm looking for someone who's had this failure with this, but succeeded doing this, and you can reach out and find that person. Conversely, you can just subscribe to the list and watch it, and whenever a journalist comes up with a story that for which you would be a great source, you contact them. It's a great, great service. It's heavily used, so I'll just tell you, there's a lot of pitches on it. Warning. Contribute for free to well-trafficked media outlets. So think about it. How could you get onto a big site like Mashable? Well, you could pay to advertise on it, and you would be on the side where nobody friggin' looks. Or you could create a piece of content for them, and you're right there in the middle. And what that is known as is guest blogging. And there's and actually this next slide has a list of these are the top 25 blogs according to Technorati in terms of traffic. Almost all of these have a guest blogging policy of some sort. So you can contact any one of these and just say, hey, I have an idea about this story, I would like to write about it for your site, and they will, do you have a guest blogging policy that I can see? And almost all of them do, and they also have an editor that's specific for guest blogs. So find out who that editor is and find out what their policy is too. The way it works is you write a piece of content that is, by the way, you could not be writing about your business. That's key. And two, it has to be original, so you can't have published it somewhere else. Some sites allow for unoriginal content, but none of these I would think would allow for unoriginal content. So it'd have to be first published on their site. And then what you get in return is you get a blurb, usually at the top, but sometimes they put it in another location, a blurb at the top that says your name and a few links. So usually I'll say, David Spark, my Twitter handle is, owns SparkMediaSolutions.com, a brand journalism firm, and blogs at SparkMed. Boom. Got those few links. Increases my recognition and industry respect dramatically. And although I haven't done it in a while, I've written a lot for Mashable. Yes?
I'm going to guess that at the same time you post your Twitter handle into something like this, you also tweet about it so that people tie these together and throw out more links to find out more about you.
So even more so, and Mashable won't let me do this, but other sites will do it.
What did he say?
Oh, I'm sorry. So the idea is once I put something like this out, I will also tweet about it, put the links out. I mean, yeah, if I'm in a major avenue, it's like, hey, Beverly, it's the equivalent of saying to everybody, hey, everyone, look, I'm on television. You tell all your friends. It's the same idea. But what I will also do to add to your comment here is I will also write a companion piece. So if I'll write a lead piece on a site, I will write a companion piece and link to it from that site. So that does two major things for you. One is you draw traffic to your site. Second, you're creating your own backlinks. So Google's search ranking is all built on backlinks. Well, you're creating your own backlink from one of the top 25 sites to your site. So it's really kind of critical. So I'm just creating sort of a companion piece. Mashable has strict rules about linking back, even if it's completely relevant, but a lot of sites don't. So you just got to find out what you can and can't do. But even if it does, you should put that content on your site regardless. Similarly, and I'll talk about this more, you can leave comments on blog posts and link back to an article as well. Here's another thing. Go after your industry's whale publications. A lot of you might think, hey, well, I'm not a journalist and I haven't been in the industry long and nobody knows who I am. I'll just start with this 10th tier site over here. Do not do that. Seriously, don't feel ashamed to go after one of the big guns. There's no reason you shouldn't try to approach, these guys don't have guest blogging policies, but you can approach them by writing and creating content for them. I go back to the thing of the bookers are overloaded. The whole thing is you don't go to the editor-in-chief. You find out that one section in the back of the publication or that one segment on TV who's the associate producer or the associate editor that handles that? You got to find out the name of that person, and you approach that specific person. And I'll tell you a very quick story of how I got started in journalism. So I 17 years, more than 40 publications. I wrote for a couple early on. I wrote for like one or two really tiny rags back in Chicago. I mean, they were like these throwaway things you'd see like the Sunday Circular type. It was awful, garbage. But I was at a conference and I ran into a woman who wrote for PC Computing magazine. If you remember back in the day, that was a really, really big publication. It was one of the top 3 publications along with PC Magazine and PC World. I had 1 million circulation, and I mentioned to the woman, "Oh, I loved your magazine. I would love to write for it." She goes, "Well, pay me. Maybe I can get you write something in the back of the magazine." So I wrote a 200-word review in the back of PC Computing. I mean, this is like where the classified ads are way, way, way back in the pub. I spent, honestly, 10 hours writing that. I read a lot faster now, but back then I didn't know what I was doing. I spent forever on it. I wanted to make sure it was perfect. She said, pretty good. Let me give you another one. She gave me a couple more. Moved me up to the middle, and I got to write features and headline, cover stories for PC Computing as well. The key is I got something in PC Computing. It can be the smallest thing. But the fact that I was able to drop PC Computing's brand name, I got everything else. Because it was a well-respected brand. So get a 10-second spot on CBS, whatever it takes, and then you drop CBS, and then you can start nailing other stuff as well. This is the core to content production, is creating or key to building your brand is creating what I call a proactive and a reactive editorial plan. And let's walk through that. Proactive techniques, you should be telling your stories. Let's walk through that. Thought pieces. So if you have a big opinion on, I'm going to keep using HTML5, about the state of HTML5 versus native, which I know is an endless debate, write it. You need kind of anchor pieces. And if you don't think you're a good writer, but you think you talk good on camera, create a video of it. And make sure you get a transcript of it too. It's super cheap. You don't create some kind of written content, you can't be physically seen online. That is the only way search engines operate. They have to see text. If you don't want to write it, you speak on camera, you speak on your podcast, and you hire a transcription service, less than $1 a minute for this stuff. It's completely worth it. Tell stories, customer stories. You have current customers now, and you can write a case study about it. Do it. That is going to be your most valuable asset. A mentor of mine, when I was starting out, I was very, very aggravated. I remember the first gig I got, my client talked down my price 33%, and I was so upset about it. But I didn't have a leg to stand on. I was a complete unknown entity. And the guy who was my mentor was a guy who had actually previously sold an ad agency and was starting another one right away. And he said, "Oh, I'm not worrying about the money now. I'm just going after the stories." And it couldn't have been more right, because once you have stories, once you have tales of, "Oh, I helped this company do X, Y, Z, and this was a trouble thing we had, but then we succeeded that." Once you can start telling people that, then you've got credibility. It's far more valuable than anything you have written on your resume, because nobody remembers anything on your resume. They do remember the stories that you tell. What you've learned from your mistakes, this is great stuff. In fact, I offer this as a common question that I ask people in just basic interviews. Business stories, same thing as customer stories. And this is the very last one. If you do not have clients and you do not have stories, we're talking, I was talking, his first job to my first job, I did it for a pittance, sometimes volunteering. If you have to volunteer to get a good story, so maybe you may have a job that sucks, and there's no good story about it. If you can volunteer to do a project on something you're really passionate about and get a good story about it, and then write about it, that will help your business and help your profile and help your influence more than the money you're making at the other job on the thing that you don't care about. Proactive technique. So I'm going to go through a few quick techniques of proactive content creation. Conduct your own research. Retrievo is a search engine for consumer electronics. They have a blog and a series called Gadgetology. And what they do is they ask people questions. People come to their blog or to their website. Luckily, they get tons of traffic because they're a search engine. But you can actually pay for services to do this if you don't have enough traffic. And they ask some questions. And what they do is they always think about very thought-provoking questions to ask. And this one did extraordinarily well. It was about social media addiction. You might have read about this a while ago. They asked people, how many people after you turn off your computer are checking your email and your social statuses after you've, quote, gone to sleep. And the number of people who did that was astonishing, and the number of people who were doing it just before and after sex was astonishing as well. And so, as you might imagine, I mean, this was, you know, a kind of very enticing study. So all the major news outlets picked it up. The Wall Street Journal picked it up, New York Times. It became very, very popular. And they've been repeatedly successful on that because they think ahead as to what that headline's going to be after they do the research. Proactive tip, technique, tips and tricks, how-tos. And I'm going to read some stats for you on this woman. So this is Ruth Perryman. You can see a tiny picture of her on the right. So she has a company called QB Specialists. She is a QuickBooks expert, and she decided to write a blog giving one QuickBook tip every single day. And it was all designed to drive traffic to her business. And here is the stats. In 6 weeks, total weekly visitors to her business site jumped 345%. That's to the business site, not the blog. So any traffic you build in the blog transfers to the business site as well. Not a one-to-one, but definitely there's a relationship. And the majority, though, is from the blog and Twitter. Her Twitter following jumped from 75 to 10,000 in 6 weeks. And her business, and this is the key thing, this is where the money comes in, her business got hired to be CFO of a major franchisor as well, because her billing. All she did was create one QuickBook tip a day, and in just months, her influence had been discovered. Now, the point of creating a proactive technique is to establish your voice. That's where you're creating content proactive. Reactive is responding to the market, whatever is happening in the market, and that increases your discovery. So if you have the issue of nobody knows who the hell I am, you need to focus on increasing your discovery through reactive techniques. And here's the key thing about reactive technique. You have to be fast. So if you have another project you're working on, you have to know to put it down at this very moment, because there's an opportunity at this very second that I have to create something and publish it right now. And I'll explain. So first thing is, whatever is the top media outlet in your industry, you have to track it. So if everyone talks about what's in the Wall Street Journal, make sure you're just at least looking at the headlines of the Wall Street Journal. Anytime a headline hits something that is relevant to you, you respond. So I'll tell you. So one of my clients is a company called iRise. I don't know if you know this company, iRise, or they're a past client. I don't have them anymore. But they do application simulation. I don't know if anyone has heard this term before, but when I describe it, it'll make sense to you. They're essentially CAD for websites. You can simulate an entire website without throwing out a bunch of huge ass requirements document. Now that makes sense, but what the point of the product is, they improve speed of web development. They improve the process of innovation as well. So yes, they could do a search on application simulation. No one's friggin' writing about that at all, ever. But if they look at what the net result of their product is, which is improve innovation and speed up web development and reduce costs, people are writing about those things. So if they watch those terms, and whenever those come up, they add a comment and then link back to an article that they have on their site that speaks about innovation, speed of web development. And we did that. We, on the circuits, the New York Times blog, they would see something about innovation, write a comment, link back to an article on their site, increases their discovery dramatically. The key thing is, those blog posts have a shelf life of sometimes 30 minutes to an hour, especially when we're talking like Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. Track discussions, whatever, if the hot discussions are happening in GitHub or somewhere else, just track them. If they're all of a sudden taking off, they're flaming, have a comment in there, link back to something on your site that's relevant. Leave a comment at the source, like what I said before about the New York Times blog, and then link back to more info on your site or blog. Here's another great technique is connect your story with a current trend. This is a personal one. So on the right is a book that my sister wrote called Good for the Jews. On the left is a picture of Bernie Madoff, who is bad for the Jews. It just so happens my mom went to high school with Bernie Madoff. I didn't know this until it came up and she told me this. I'm like, where's your yearbook? And I found it and I scanned that photo and I put it up on my blog. And so I created an association with Bernie Madoff, which at the time was a very, very hot topic, and I connected it to my sister's book, which had nothing to do with Bernie Madoff. But Bernie Madoff, bad for the Jews, my sister's book, good for the Jews. Well, I was fortunate enough to have access to a high school photo of Bernie Madoff. There were a bunch of sites that were completely unrelated to interest in my sister's book, but I all of a sudden was able to promote my sister's book by making this association. Similarly, still with Bernie Madoff, you can see the very top line of the screen, it says MADE, M-A-D-E, off. This is a cell phone game made by a company called Cellufun, and they pumped this game out very quickly when the Bernie Madoff scandal happened. And they found, hold on, let me pull out the percentage, 25,000 people downloaded it, and 40% spent actual money playing this game. And the thing is, you spend money, then you get more people to invest and participate in the game. That's the idea. But people had fun with it. They were being silly. It was all silly about it. But they have created a development environment that, I mean, the whole point of it is a Ponzi scheme. Everyone knows it when they're playing it. But the whole point is that they created a development scheme that when a big story hits, they can just crank something out without having 23 levels of approval. This is, I mean, quite an impressive model right there. It doesn't have to be a great game, it just has to be associated with something hot. You're riding the wave. Actually, there's David Meerman Scott actually has a term for it. He calls it newsjacking. You're hijacking a hot news story. All right, coming very close to the end here, and manage your followers. This is super, super key.
Got another question for the previous
Sure.
topic. Do you use any tools to like track what's hot and what's popping? Like, do you Google alerts or?
Yeah, I mean, I use Google Alerts. I mean, there are truly over 1,000 social media monitoring programs out there. There's a wiki site that literally has a list of all of them. The most well-known one in the industry is Radiant 6, but it costs a pretty penny. I mean, I just use things like, you know, Twitter alerts and Google alerts and things like that, but I'm not doing this as heavily. I can't tell you which one, but there truly are over 1,000 social media monitoring programs out there. And the king daddy of them all, owned by Salesforce, is Radiant 6. So always give more. Oh, the big thing about the term influencer, you never are going to call yourself an influencer. The only one's going to call you an influencer is somebody else. And that someone else is going to be your fan. And if you want other people to think you are an influencer, then you have to treat your fan unbelievably well. I mean, you could have, at one point, one fan. I remember someone had actually created I used to be, if anyone remembers ZDTV, Tech TV, I was on that network way, way back in the day. And I literally had one person who created a David Spark fan site. And I told this to someone and they said, unless it's two people, if it's just one person, it's stalking. It's no longer a fan. So I was very amused by that. So you always have to give more. So if someone raises their hand and says, I'm a fan, and that means leaving a comment on your site. If people are leaving a comment, that doesn't mean, oh cool, there's a comment. That means you've got to respond to them. That means they've taken the time and the effort. You have to respond to them. So don't ignore them. Spend a lot of time with your fans. That could be responding to them, emailing them back when they reach out to you. Do not ignore them, because the worst thing that can happen is you were lucky enough to have a fan, you were lucky to have enough to have someone to call you an influencer. If you do ignore them, you just turn them into a detractor. Wow, that was a bad move. But here's the amazing thing. It's really easy to turn a detractor into an influencer, or into an advocate, if you want, not an influencer, an advocate. Create special events. If you happen to be traveling and you are connected to a bunch of people on Facebook or LinkedIn, you can search and say, yeah, like for example, I'm going to Chicago soon. I'm going to try to connect with people I know in Chicago. Follow up with everyone, like I just said, and have a discussion area. That just means have a way to respond, an email, a Twitter. You don't have to have a formal discussion area, but just a way for people to reach out. I'm always amazed when people have blogs and there's literally no way to respond to them. Give to your community. Here are two really good examples. This is Kent Lewis. He has an organization called PDX Mindshare out of Portland, Oregon. And this organization was just designed to help professionals in Portland connect with each other. He doesn't ask for any money from anyone, but what he has done is he's established himself as a connector in the industry. This is another way, by the way, I haven't talked about this, but your voice, you could be an influencer solely by introducing other people, by hosting events. I mean, I was just talking about this with Peter Kellner. If you don't know, Peter Kellner is the guy who's responsible for putting on this entire event. This event is core to his business. It is what keeps him connected to the developer community. It's super, super important to him. So you could just do that. Your thing could be hosting events online, virtually, or in person, and you're seen as a connector. And that's what he does. And a quote from Seth Godin about Kent Lewis here says, by building something that connects his community, by building a permission asset with the right people and not asking for anything in return, Kent builds his reputation. He makes it more likely that people will trust him, talk to him, and hire him, his firm. And then down below, oh, it's not, I thought it was on this screen. Next screen. Tripwire, this is one of my clients. Similarly, so B-Side, Security B-Sides, this is a community-run organization for the security community. If you have the opportunity to volunteer or sponsor a community-run organization, do it, because that's where the most passionate people are in that industry. So there's lots of like developer user groups. Get involved, sponsor, do whatever you can. So they do sponsor Security B-Sides, but they do even more. You know, they're an organization that just needs services done. They need web development, they need designers, whatnot. They need a logo created. And Tripwire could have given the money to go hire a designer to do it. They said, you know what, we've got some extra time for our designers, we'll design it for you. So it doesn't have to be money related, but that is a way to help build influence by connecting yourself with the communities. Create communities on passions. Just quickly go over this. This is political loudmouth. I'm sure you've all received a message from a friend saying, hey, like my business. No, why do you want to like their business? You just do it for your friend. But what they do is, instead of saying like political loudmouth, saying like the thing that we're passionate about. And this is an organization that does political advertising. And so the thing they were passionate about at the beginning was gay marriage and legalizing marijuana. And then they moved on to any liberal cause. As a result, let me see if I can pull the stats on this as well. They garnered 17,000 fans in just a few months and got 2.5 million views. And they've got tons of business as a result for the 2012 election season. Just some simple stuff. Socially enable all your content. That makes it make it really easy for people to share your stuff. That means putting a Twitter retweet button, a Facebook share button. Use one of these commenting systems like Discuss or Intense Debate. They're equally as good. I think they're both fine. They're much better than the commenting system that comes with WordPress, and they also allow people to sign in with their social handles and then also sort of spread it via their social handles as well. All right, this is the depressing part. At the beginning, no one will pay attention to you. Understand that, respect that, accept it. And then I'm sort of wrapping up here. It's depressing. Sorry, that's just the way it is. Don't assume, like literally, you're going to see your traffic numbers in the teens at the beginning. It will be really, really depressing. Don't let that upset you. Don't focus on that. Focus just on creating your content in the beginning. Focus on getting those interviews. Focus on building out your site and developing what your voice is going to be. But it's going to get easier and a lot more fun. And here's the other key thing, especially at the beginning, when no one's looking at you at the beginning, happily make mistakes. Don't feel that you have to do everything perfect. You can screw things up. This is the moment that I knew my business was going well. So I've been in business almost 6 years, and we are happily doing extraordinarily well now. We've been growing at a very, very steady pace year after year. And I'm also fortunate that I just happen to be in kind of the flavor of the month right now, so I don't know how long it will last. But this is the moment you know you're doing well. And it will be perception surpasses reality. So after year 1 or 2 of running the business, people were saying to me, because I was creating a lot of content, because I had a newsletter and I was putting that content out there, and I was publishing it and creating these videos and creating these articles and putting all that stuff out there, because it was all going out there, people were saying to me, my God, David, things must be going unbelievably well for you. The reality was, it wasn't. It was going, not poorly, but it was just going, like that. I did not correct anyone. Luckily, reality met up with perception, and luckily now you can surpass it. But that's the moment you know you're doing it right. Dave Auslender, A-U-S-L-E-N-D-R, call them and just say, give me the same mic you sold David Spark. Sony.
So you were saying that WordPress is a good place for starting the blogs. When you go to name the blogs, do you associate them with yourself personally or the company that you're associated
The
with?
ideal thing to do, it all depends on, again, the brand you're trying to create. The ideal thing to do is put your blog within your main business site, whatever it is. But I didn't do that. I used to have a radio show off Clear Channel, and I've named my blog after my radio segment. It just that brand stuck. It's called Spark Minute. So it's actually not within my business site, but the ideal thing would have been creating it sparkmediasolutions.com/blog or blog.sparkmediasolutions.com. It's better for search engines. It's better for portability. If you ever need to move your blog, especially if it's under a subfolder like /blog, it's much better that way. So that's the recommend. And also, I mean, if you're trying to move traffic to your business site, physically have it on your business site, just under another directory. Or, better even yet, you can build your whole business site off of WordPress. No reason you couldn't do that. Lots and lots of companies do that. It's also, you'll get your business site up a hell of a lot faster. Let me conclude right now. It is 1:15 right now. Thank you so much for your time. If you can contact me, use that link, has all the information.